I got to work on that transition here. Jason Bryant with you at Matt Talk Online. This is the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. Today, I am going to be talking about the Olympic team trials. This will be my 5th U.S. trials. It'll be my 7th overall. I've worked 2 Canadian trials. So I'm doing a little afternoon drive. It's a little early for afternoon drive. But I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the memories I recall from the last 7 trials I've worked, or actually, I've had. This will be my 7th. So the previous 4 U.S. trials and the 2 Canadian trials. So here in the Speakeasy, recording episode 650 of the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. If you're watching on Facebook Live or on Twitch or on Rockfin, you can drop a comment, and I will, if you got a question or whatnot, or a memory or something I might recall, you want to know something, not necessarily ask me anything, but basically, hey, ask me anything. So I've got to monitor Rockfin chat over here that is free as we live stream. Those of you watching on mattalkonline.com/live, Facebook Live, I'm just happy to have been working wrestling the last several weeks. So I've gone with the MAC Championships in Trenton, New Jersey, worked that for ESPN+. I went to the NAIA Championships in Wichita, got to see an amazing team race there with Life University, the Running Eagles, knocking off Grandview, preventing them from the X, preventing them from winning 10. I guess something about Iowa schools trying to go for number 10 just doesn't happen. Actually, it's anybody, really. But, of course, Iowa and Grandview both didn't win it the year they were going for title number 10. So that's one thing I'm also proud to have actually seen. I like history. I like to see when teams set records like Grandview has. I also like to see when upstart teams create historic moments like Life did. Then I went to the NWCA Division III Coaches Association Division III Championships. Those were in Coralville, Iowa. I had an opportunity to work those with John Peterson. Dick Simmons, tournament director, a guy who worked for years at Cornell College and ran a lot of Division III championships at the U.S. Cellular Center and the old Cedar Rapids Ice Arena, which was a little wacky, but that's what happens. So we look at the NCAA Division I championships. Of course, we know that's kind of a big deal. That happened. It was limited in terms of fans, but got to work that with Brian Hazard. And so the last 4 weeks have been great, had a week off, and now we're talking trials. So I'm going to go back in time, give you a little bit of a more or less a chronology of things I remember. Now, there are obvious things that were more memorable to other people that were at these trials. There were things that were memorable historically, people that made the teams, memorable matches. But, all those things, when we look at, if I break it down, sure, I'm going to be able to remember certain things. But when I shoot from the hip like this, and I wonder what jumps out to me, what do I remember most? It's not always the wrestling. Those of you who've known me for a while know that a lot of the best part of the wrestling tournaments is what goes on after the wrestling goes on, the camaraderie, the fraternal nature of the sport of wrestling, the brotherhood, the sisterhood, not just of the traveling pants, but of the traveling singlets that are traded frequently in Fargo, like how I tied that in. I've never seen that movie, by the way. So we're going to go back to 2004. Memorial Day weekend. I had just gone to Virginia Beach with one of my high school friends, and I'm in college at the time. This is my last year of college at Old Dominion. And I go to Virginia Beach. It's nice. It's warm. I fall asleep on the beach. And I wasn't really, I am a pale white man. The hat. That's basically was what I looked like. The most color on me was my tattoo. So I get scorched. Like the inside of my legs, because they were like kind of facing outward like that. I get scorched. I get sunburnt. And my back, it was just so bad. I'll spare you the gory details of what my back looked like, because it was just, oh man. So anyway, USA Wrestling had picked me up as a freelancer, and I actually have my credential. So right here on the screen, let's make sure you can get a little bit of if you can read it without the glare there. Okay, Internet Media Assistant. That smirk on my face. Yeah, so that was me in 2004. I'm not yet 25 years old. I turned 25 later that August. That was year 7 of my college career. Had a little bit of hair left because right now the hairline's, anyway, we won't talk about that. So Internet Media Assistant, that was in the RCA Dome. So I fly out there, end up running into one of my college buddies, James Gibson. So we go downtown. I check out some place. I'm poor, man. I can't afford to go anywhere. But one of the guys that is a photographer for the event, Paul Swisher, who has done a lot of photography, was really active in that 04 to 2010 era. And him and I were pretty much rooming next to each other. They roomed us together, because he picked up the room, I think. That's how it worked. End up driving back with him as I missed my flight. That's another story entirely. I blame the Detroit Pistons for that one since they were in town playing the Pacers. The fans, anyway. So with Paul, we get there and we're doing the rounds. We're figuring out where we're going. We're getting the lay of the land. Okay, the event is in the RCA Dome. Run into Frank Lapoli, who is one of the guys with the Virginia Challenge that I helped found. This is so 2004. We're like, hey, Indy 500's coming up. We drive to the Brickyard. We drive to the Speedway. Practice is open, so we go in to the infield, and then we're just watching these Indy cars just fly by. I mean, I'm not a racing guy, but I know enough about it. I mean, I grew up around Langley Speedway. I've been to Richmond a couple times for NASCAR races, but I'd never seen an Indy car. And these things were flying just on practice. So it was pretty cool to go to the Brickyard. We go get lunch at a place called the Slippery Noodle. I believe I bought a shirt from it then. I don't know where that shirt is now because I've had like 500 shirts that I've given away. But that's basically how Indy goes. Now, memories of Indianapolis. Most everyone you talk to in wrestling, they're going to center on Dennis Hall, Brandon Paulson. And that is exactly where I'm going to start because it was to the point where they had made the rule that they weren't going to determine a referee decision when they could just do overtime. It was like a trials thing. So they kept going, and they had to reset the clock like twice. They didn't know how long this thing was going to go. And it was, I remember Sandy was announcing, I think she was announcing with Don Blasingame. And it was just this unbelievable sequence of, these guys are still going, man. And I didn't know much about them. I was still, wet behind the ears when it came to international freestyle, having only worked the World Championships the year prior in New York City as a freelancer, and then I did some work for the AP that year. But Hall and Paulson was just the marathon, and it was, you could look at it and go, well, it was 20-some minutes or however long it was at Greco. Well, those guys were getting after it. Now, the rule sets were different, so there were a couple situations under today's rules. Of course, we know that there's criteria, that we wouldn't have had that overtime, things of that nature. But the Hall-Paulson thing really kind of embodied what that Olympic fighting spirit was about to me, having seen it at my first trials for the first time. Other things that I remember were the opportunity to see Cale Sanderson wrestle again, because I'd only seen him wrestle at the 2002 NCAA Championships in Albany, the 03 Worlds, and now the 04 Trials, because I didn't have really the budget to really cover these things when I was still running the original version of Mat Talk Online back in Virginia. I wasn't getting those announcing gigs yet. So seeing Cale wrestle, and then, Kerry McCoy, who is like behind Bruce Baumgartner, my favorite wrestler of all time. It's something about active heavyweights. I got a Baumgartner bobblehead behind me. I got Kerry McCoy, an autographed poster of Kerry McCoy right here on my wall next to Dan Hodge, the Sports Illustrated. So it's not lip service when I talk. I mean, the Baumgartner bobblehead is behind me in the, you see the glassware down there? There's a Gable bobblehead in there. There's a Baumgartner bobblehead. There's actually a Goldie Gopher bobblehead that I found somewhere. But that's I was excited to see those guys wrestle. Then there's also the development of women's wrestling. And I had started covering the girls in Fargo, the junior women, 2 years prior. So seeing Mary Kelly come through, and then her on the senior level, and then seeing the biggest audible gasp from the crowd that entire first session that it might have been the biggest gasp that wasn't a final, was when Sarah Fulp Allen, now Sarah Bahora, Sarah Fulp Allen was wrestling Mary Kelly, and she's vicious with a bow and arrow. So she went with a back bow, cranked it over, and like, it was like, I mean, she folded Sarah up like an accordion backwards, and the ref blew it dead, and everybody was like, oh, she was about to go over. I mean, it was just one of those things that, like, women's wrestling at that moment was like, okay, that was good for women's wrestling, because that means everybody in the building was paying attention to that match, which was a pretty cool thing to think about. But Stephanie Shaw, high school kid, Vanessa Oswalt, high school kid, they were in high school at the trials, and they knocked off returning world medalists and such. I know Sally Roberts had come off a world bronze medal in 2003, the World Championships, and I'm pretty sure it was Stephanie Shaw who beat her on the front side. And Stephanie was from Connecticut. I believe 16 or 17 years old at the time. Eventually went to Oklahoma City University, but she breaks through, and it shows like, whoa, these next level kids. We talk about the kids that are ready at a high school for Division I level. These are kids coming out of high school that were ready for the senior level. And, what's interesting is the depth has gotten so much better now that even the solid high school girls that come out and are ready for the senior level, they're not making those kinds of wins anymore because the development of the college wrestling system on the women's side, which is all freestyle, that has built the depth so much to where once in a blue moon, you're going to get high school girls come in and make an impact on the senior level. Well, this year we're going to have that with the two high schoolers, Kennedy Blades, being one of them. We saw her in the last chance qualifier final against another high schooler, Welker. That was just, those two kids are, they're ready for prime time. So back to 2004. So it's the first women's team, and we've got a two-time world champion in then named Christy Morano. She came in as Christy Sangline. Christy Morano, now we know her as Christy Davis. She's the head wrestling coach, women's coach at Emmanuel in Georgia. Her daughter actually qualified for the trial. So Kayla Morano, who was very young at this time. So this is the first women's team. Patricia Miranda, Taylor O'Donnell, Sarah McMahon, and Takara Montgomery. Christy was trying to cut. There was only 4 weights, and she was in one of those tweener weights where she was just big judo thrower, dropping people on their heads, arm spins, arm throws. Christy was nasty good, and brought a different look to women's wrestling, something that you see these athletes coming. Like Tricia Saunders was a super athletic gymnast who came back to wrestling after her, there was no collegiate career for her. So Christy had a chance to try. She was trying to make Sarah's weight and couldn't, and had to go up and wrestle Takara, and Takara beat her for the spot. So sadly, the way the weight classes were then really eliminated one of the most decorated women's wrestlers, one of the most decorated, 9 world medals. Christy has 9 world medals, 2 world championships. That's rare air for USA Wrestling. That's rare air for wrestling. So the fact that she didn't make an Olympic team, and almost coming back, the cycle started a little too late in the prime of her career. She did make a world championship. She was silver in the Worlds in 2007, and then 2008 didn't make the team there either. But it also opened my eyes to, who was Taylor O'Donnell at the time? I didn't know who she was. So it really did open my eyes to women's wrestling and seeing it up close. Jamil Kelly winning the clinch, and then, the year before was on a world team and didn't do much in New York City, and then boom, silver medalist. Jamil's shoe game, by the way, is super good. If you saw him last week, the NCAAs with those university OG Air Jordan 1s. I hope the sneakerheads don't come after me for incorrect terminology. Air Jordan 1 OG University highs. I don't think they're the mids. I think they were the highs. But Jamil placed that year. Of course, Kale wins it, but in a grueling 3-match series with Lee Fullhart. So those are some of the initial memories I had about Indianapolis. Then we go to Vegas. And by this time, it's 2008. I'm working full-time for the NWCA. We have our convention in Las Vegas prior, so that makes sense. This was actually one of the places that I was being lured away from the NWCA from Wrestling 411. I learned everything I know about blackjack from Lee Pritz in Fargo the previous couple summers, and I actually thought I knew Fargo or blackjack because I did pretty well at the blackjack tables at the Excalibur where we were staying. Also, a couple weeks ago, I found an old recorder. An audio recorder. It wasn't even like USB. It was just an audio recorder. I had interviews with Ben Askren and Steve Mako from that trials. Ben that year, of course, had the putting the chin in China, poking some fun at himself there. So things about Vegas was the Cejudo Stephen Abbas series. Dennis DeLito said recently on the Wrestling Changed My Life podcast that Stephen Abbas could barely walk. Well, you couldn't have. You want to talk about adrenaline, man. Stephen Abbas was, he's got a silver medal to his credit. Henry Cejudo had lost his only match at the World Championships a year before in Baku in 2007. Really, and wasn't even the 1 seed. Matt Azevedo was. And I remember in the press conference, Azevedo was there. There was this judo guy, Brewster something. I can't remember. He was an older guy. I think he was in his 50s. Was a Vegas like magician or showman. And Ronda Jean Rousey, as she was then known, was also a part of this press conference. So my early introduction to Ronda Rousey was at this press conference where at the time she was 20, and she gave an anecdote at the press conference. It's like, well, it's a lot like going out drinking. If you're going to go out drinking, you're either going to go out drinking or you're going to go out and get drunk or something along those lines. It was just like, and I'm looking over at Gary Abbott. It's like she's not 21 yet, is she? It's like, that's not great optics. So that was my first introduction to Ronda. And of course, Cejudo makes the team. Eventually, we know what happens with him over in Beijing. Jake Deitschler, Greco-Roman. Now, Jake graduated early from Anoka High School. He was the 5th wrestler from that school to make an Olympic team. But Jake technically was, senior class of 2008, makes the team, beats Harry Lester on the front side. Because one thing that was trouble, Harry could have sat out had he won the U.S. Open, but Harry's weight cuts were always notorious. And he made it for the trials and then got upset by this high school senior, coached by Brennan Paulson, Dan Chandler, the Minnesota Storm crew. Like, this is the heir apparent. The kid's 18 years old. And then he ends up beating Farouk Sahin to make the team. Farouk had a great international career, made a couple world teams, but had emigrated from Turkey, joined the Army's world-class athlete program. Other things is how Clarissa Chun made her first Olympic team with late heroics, craziness to knock Patricia Miranda off the top of the ladder. Patricia had made the team, was the first medalist, winning that silver medal at the Olympics in Athens in 2004. And seeing Clarissa Chun come through. And also Andy Rovat, because Mo Lawal was supposed to be the heir apparent when Kale retired after 2004. And Mo had gotten hosed in a couple of world championships. One of them against Sajidov, had him beaten in this. They changed the rule sets in 2005, and the last point he got hit for fleeing at the Worlds, and then Sajidov won like 1-1, 1-1, 1-1 or some crap like that. And then 2 years prior, in 2006, Rovat had pinned Lawal in the front side, and that was a big surprise. Like, oh my gosh! And then here comes Andy Rovat again, makes the Olympic team. So a couple things I remember about Vegas. Of course, also walking through is Jake Deitschler. Walking in, and he's in the Hard Rock. No, of course, he's battered and bruised, and I don't think anybody bothered to check this Olympian's ID, so it's not a big deal. But I remember all the people going, "He's so cute!" And then walking through, I remember seeing Chris McCormick of all people, and then he wrestled at Missouri, and then here comes Deitschler walking across. I see him. I said, "What's up, Jake?" He goes, "JB, how come I was at ASIC's first team?" and at the time, I was doing the rankings for Intermat, and I was the only one in the country who had him ranked number 1. Everybody else had Andrew Howe or Alex Mead. So that year, the guy Intermat had number 1 made the Olympic team as a high schooler. Take a little sip here. I'll use this mute button again. Now we move to 2000. Actually, I forgot to show you my credentials. So there's the credential from. It's really bad with that lighting. Got to work on that ring light. So yeah, working for Intermat back then. 2012, I'm now with USA Wrestling. 3rd trials, 3rd technically different situation, even though as a freelancer for USA Wrestling the first time. This one, Iowa City. Rules suck so bad. That's what I remember about Iowa City. Is a couple things in 2012 was the end of the Frayer Metcalf thing. And Hawkeye Nation getting all rowdy because Metcalf had tied the match, but Frayer had the higher points situation for the point total. And like, wait, what? Yeah, this 3-period thing. I mean, the criteria is what it is. It's not going away in international wrestling. Matter of fact, some people are preferring it over overtime. But the way that letdown was for the crowd was like kind of a buzzkill for the energy. Other things I remember there is I was working for USA. I was broadcasting for this one. So I wasn't on NBC, but I was on the NBC sports streams. And I took freestyle after giving Van Stokes the reins on that for a couple years, my first couple years at USA Wrestling. And we've got Cejudo and Simmons. We've got Henry throwing his shoes into the crowd and this wild 3-period match with those two. Simmons knocking off Cejudo, sending him back into retirement, for lack of a better term. Kelsey Campbell knocking off Helen Maroulis in what was a stunning upset. I mean, Helen was the heir apparent. It was supposed to be her time. Kelsey said, no, my time. So Kelsey made that Olympic team. The late heroics again by Clarissa Chun. Alyssa Lampe had her dead to rights on more than one occasion. Chun wins that. And that was a big year for Chun. She had some personal things she was going through, and she came through and won 2 matches late, won periods late, forced a third, won it, and then ultimately won a bronze medal in London that year. So that was really exciting. Now, the biggest thing about 2012 that I remember the most was not any particular champion. Was not, other than it was really cool to see Sam Hazewinkle make a team after going, 3-3-3-2 in college. Because Sam's uncle and father were Olympians. 2 of those Anoka High School graduates, by the way. So we got Deitschler, the Hazewinkles. Then we also have Dan Chandler and Brandon Paulson. Those are the 5 Anoka high school alumni that have made Olympic teams. Now we look at, again, Dake and Taylor. David Taylor, Kyle Dake met in a consolation round at the 2012 Olympic trials. And it was like the first match of the session after we restarted. We had a little break. And I remember thinking during a break, this is the most anticipated consolation match of all time. And Taylor's coming off a win. And it's, obviously he's not the win over Dake, but like pretty sure 12 he was a champion. Because then, that's right, because Dake went up the next year. And everybody was like, you're ranking Dake higher on that freestyle win. No, I would have ranked Dake. I actually did with the open mat, rank Dake higher preseason because he was the 3-time champ opposed to Taylor, who at the time was just the 1. So that being said, Dake and Taylor in that consolation and then Dake pinning him was like, what? It's like the message boards just imploded. It was one of the crazier things because in hypothetical wrestling match world, has Dake ever won a fantasy match over David Taylor? Zach Bogle of Stalemates in the house. What's up? So that was probably, I don't want to say I'm kind of on 12. I love 12. I loved Iowa City as a host. We went back there in 16. And in 16, actually, I'll get to show you my 12 credential. There's 12. That was a staff. I got my old A6 national team jacket. I love that. Love that one. Now, 16. Little side profile here. Little photo action. It was a big year for me personally because I got my first NAI, my first D3, my first D1, and then I got the Olympic trials. Would later get the Olympic Games. At that point, I didn't have the confirmation yet, but I was pretty much set to go to Rio. So now we're back in Iowa City. I remember this because I had my first sour, Beatnik Sour from Exile Brewing at the Buffalo Wild Wings. I actually have an Exile sticker on that orange hard drive you can see behind me if you're watching on the stream. You've also got Richard Immel getting punched in the face. He didn't get punched in the face, but that was with Tommy Bloodround and his sister. And I think at one point, Casey accidentally hit Richard in the nose. Next thing we're at dinner at Buffalo Wild Wings. He's like, man, I got a bloody nose. Sorry, BDI, for that one. Things in no particular order. I get to announce this thing. So it was a thrill there to do the PA. Got to work with Sandy there. Cox and Molinaro coming out of nowhere to make the spot. Yes, Zach, Ruthie right there. Give Exile another prop, another plug. Ruthie's a solid beverage. We've got the 9 seed. So when we're looking at that weight class, Pico was supposed to be the guy here in terms of the hype train. Kid was wicked good anyway. So, and at one point he's down 9-0 in the first round of Jason Ness, then comes back and wins the match 20-9. Then Ness drops down, pins Metcalf, who was upset by Frank Molinaro. It's like, who's the number 9 seed Frank Molinaro? Everybody knew who Frank Molinaro was. They just didn't think it was going to be Brett Metcalf, who had repped the U.S. on, 2010, 2011. Yeah, those 2 world teams. Was it 9, 10, 11? I think it was those 3, because one of those years he had that controversial ball draw thing with Frayer, but that's ancient history. So, yeah, Pico was down big. Metcalf went 2-Q. Helen finally making the team. And not only doing that, she was on a roll coming through Vegas, winning the world championships there, dropping people on their heads. That was pretty much the perfect season for her. Beats Yoshida in Rio. We all kind of had a hunch that this was the year somebody was going to beat Yoshida and somebody was going to be an Olympic champion on the women's side. It was going to be her. It was going to be Adeline Gray. And we know Adeline had a bad Rio, but in terms of the trials, they were dominant. Jordan Burroughs again makes a team. And Spencer Mango retired. Now, again, I skipped over Burroughs in 12, which was let me go back to 12 because, yeah, that was pretty amusing because he's running, I don't know if it was at 12 or was it 16. I know Burroughs did run stadiums basically after it, and Gary Abbott had to keep up with him. So it was one of those two. I know it was in Iowa City, and those steps are from the floor to the main level. That's a hike, man. No wonder those brands were training like a madman. You get mad running those stadiums. Yikes. I mean, you run stadiums in an arena. It's usually, you run arena. It's not as bad as a stadium. No, that's pretty bad. But, Burroughs running up, grabbing Beacon. Probably was 12 then. Or was it 16? I don't know, man. Kids are getting so big. I don't even know what year it is. So Iowa City getting to do the PA there at the trials. Won the golden microphone that year as well. And just Iowa City is a great host. It was a fantastic opportunity to showcase wrestling. The rules were better because in 2013, when we lost the games briefly, we had an opportunity to make changes, and the sport thankfully did. So that's one thing that I remember. A couple things I remember about 16, other than Carver Hawkeye as the iconic arena that it is. House of Wrestling. I mean, it is a mecca. Now, you got to be there for a dual meet. There's as special as the Olympic trials are. When the Hawks are rooting for 10 of their Hawks, it's a different environment. So now, what do I expect here at Dickies Arena 2021? Well, would have been great to do Bryce Jordan last year. Would have been great to do Bryce Jordan this year, but situations be what they may. You do with what you can. It is what it is. Whatever you want to throw out there. So there's 2 more trials. So those are my 4 U.S. trials. So back in 2015, Canada actually has their trials. They set their team in December, and then their wrestlers go to qualify the weights throughout the rest of the Olympic cycle. So 16, that's for the Pan Am qualifier, for the Last Chance Olympic qualifiers, things of that nature. So they know the athlete holds their destiny, their fate in their own hands. Unlike a situation where, like, okay, we've had like Sean Bunch qualify the weight and then come back and have to wrestle Reese Humphrey and Coleman Scott in a 3-way wrestle-off at the Beat the Streets thing to make the team. So in Canada, they set the team. So in 2015, let's use this one. Okay, 2015. That's not the right one. Here we go. 2015. No picture, no nothing. I was going to be media because I'm sitting here and I'm like, well, it's December, first week of December. I've never covered a tournament in Canada. And there was Vegas, and then there was the U.S. Open qualifier. There were like 3 events that I could look at. And I did the flights, and going to Edmonton was cheaper. Now, people are like, well, why couldn't you drive? It's Canada, right? Well, that's like 15 hours. No way. But I got like a $300 flight to Edmonton. So I call up, I email Wrestling Canada Loot. I'm like, hey, be cool to come out and cover this thing. I've never covered a Canadian tournament in Canada. It's the trials. You guys have good wrestling up there, especially the women's wrestling, world medals, world champions, things like that. Be opportunity to do some podcast stuff. Well, they're like, yeah, sure, it'd be great. You know, Tamara up there, the Rich Bender of Canada, Tamara Midwidsky. Oh, a lot of vowels in her, a lot of syllables that I gotta do right. Sorry. I know how to say your name. Not right now, I don't. So we go up there. And then I get a call from the Alberta AD, Vang. He goes, hey, you want to do the web stream? Want to do the commentary? I'm like, well, sure. I know enough about the wrestler. So then I built a quick database of what was then known as the CIS. Now it's known as U-Sport. Medalists, their college level. So I had something to go on. I had the database for UWW/old FILA stuff. Go up there, and then right before I get there, the day I leave, hey, do you want to do the TV finals with Christine Nordhagen? Yes. Yes, I'll do that. Yes, I will go to Canada to cover the first Canadian wrestling event I've ever covered. And yes, please put me on your Canadian television station with a multiple-time world champion who is a certifiable badass in Christine Nordhagen. Cool. Enjoyed it. It was a blast. Got some cool stuff out of there, too. Corey Jarvis, I had a really good short time episode with. He was a guy, he's a welder. He was a 30-something welder wrestled at Guelph for a bit. Like, welder. Makes a team. Beating Amar Desi, who was supposed to be the heir apparent. Now, Amar did beat him at the most recent trials, which I'll get to in a second. But One of the more memorable weights there was on the women's side with Jasmine Meehan beating Jen Morrison, formerly known as Jen Haley, in a monster weight class at 48 kilos, because Jessie McDonald, world champion, was in that weight too. And Jasmine came through and was just, I watched a clip. I just watched a clip in preparation for this episode about what she went through and what it was like to battle your teammate for the spot. So between Meehan and, she'd been in a world team, of course, Jessica McDonald had won a world championship. It was a dominant weight class. And a big part of that Save Olympic Wrestling movement that came through from 13 was a lot of the cooperation between the United States and Canada, especially on the women. We had the Battle of the Falls, U.S., Canada, Ukraine, that was in there. But then we go, I don't get a shiny, no face here. This is Niagara Falls for the 2015 trials for 2020, and which is also the, let's see, what we got, the Canada Games site, Niagara 2021. So there, ahead of time, I got the call. Marty called her at Brock's like, hey, here's our dates. You interested in announcing? Yeah, they brought me in to do the PA. And this was probably one of the cooler things I got to do, because in doing the World Championships, that's always cool, but you got to be unbiased. One of the cooler things is saying, ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the national anthem of the United States of America. What's also cool is when other countries bring you in to do their event. And I'm not gonna sing "Oh Canada." I know some of the words because I'm kind of a hockey fan, kinda. And the way the Canadian Federation and the host organizations, like back in Edmonton, which is technically Strathcona County, I mean, the mayor was there. It's like, oh, you're the American that's come up to work our television. Like, yes. And then Tonya Verbeek picks me up at the airport. I mean, you got Olympic silver medalists like, hey Jay, I'm right here. I was like, cool, hi. Like, it's just we're close to the same age, so it's like we're in that age bracket. We're just like, oh, this is cool, and just to know that what she went through, she didn't have those opportunities until later in her career. So like a lot of those Canadian women were into their 30s as they were winning. Like Christine Nordhagen gave it a go in 2004, but just a little bit past the prime of her career. But being able to go to Canada and do the PA in a theater. There were 2 mats down on a theater, and I was like front and center. It's kind of scary. So everything I said was heard. At one point, I know Joe Dashew, who was a Greco-Roman Canadian. There's a few of them. There's Johnny Greco, it's Johnny Yates, and then you've got got Joe, who trains down here with the Storm, and as we call him, Canadian Joe. In Canada, they just call him Joe. So dad jokes. But 2015 was great. Getting across the border to catch the flight out of Buffalo was a little harrowing, because the Uber driver at 4 a.m. is like, I need to go home to get my passport. So that's something you don't have to deal with in Iowa City. Of course, I don't even think there were Uber drivers the first time I was in there, or second time. I don't know. Still new to it. But that's what I've got as far as memory lane goes. No, is it poignant? Is it insightful? I don't know. I just thought about it today. I wrote down some notes. I was like, this is what I remember about these trials. So I got 4 U.S. trials, 2 Canadian trials, with my 7th trials coming up on the PA, announcing with Dort Mayab, Dickies Arena. I just had the COVID test shoved up my face today. And, I mean, it went right here, if you're watching on video, up my left nostril. And that thing, like, impaled me. I think I forgot what the capital of Virginia was momentarily. It pierced my brain so hard. Yeah, that one kind of sucked. But anyway, that's what I got to look forward to seeing. Those of you who can go down there, I'm going to be in a bubble, folks, so I'm tier 1, so I'm not going to be able to be seen very much. So those of you out there who are having the opportunity to come, I hope you enjoy it. Hope you enjoy some great wrestling. The Olympic trials is concentrated excellence in every style. There is no fluff. There is no easy first round matchup. There is no easy consolation round 1 matchup. I think I saw John Kozak out there put a post out about just the men's freestyle side, that there were 70 All-Americans and like 40 national champions out of 72 wrestlers. Yikes. That's gnarly. Crazy. Concentrated excellence. This is the elite of the elite in all 3 styles in American wrestling. You win a spot for Team USA, you're expected to medal, right? That's what we hope. That's what we hope to see. We hope to see some great competition. Just so great to be out of the mats. As always, I'd like to thank you for spending your time with me. For those of you watching, for those of you subscribed here at MattTalkOnline.com, to the Short Time Wrestling Podcast, you can go to MattTalkOnline.com/join the team. You can join by Patreon. You can contribute by Venmo, PayPal, buy me a coffee. Or you can subscribe to my Rockfin channel, ROKFIN.com/MattTalkOnline. $9.99 a month gets you everything on the network. If you're into the Patreon thing, you get all sorts of stats, facts, and figures, some gear, some draft glasses that I stack the bar with, some hats that you can keep warm with, those type of stuff. It's the way I give back to you because I couldn't do this without you. I appreciate everybody's support, and thank you for listening and watching as always, because here comes the tagline with a pregnant pause. I'd like to thank you for spending your time with me because you've always got time for a short time.